in your body right about here. It's real big. It's wide and goes down. This is what it looks like. Dark color. It's got all kinds of functions. The liver does more things than anything in the body, probably. I mean, it's one thing it does, it makes bile. And it secretes the bile that it makes into the gallbladder, which sits right underneath it. And there's the gallbladder. My dad said he wanted to come do the gallbladder removal video. He has to go to the doctor, though, today and check on something. And so he may, if the doctor says they need more tests or whatever, he may have to do that. But if not, he'll be here doing it. If he can't come tomorrow, I'm just going to delay it. Hopefully he can come later this year. So anyway, that's the gallbladder. It sits underneath the liver, and the liver squirts bile into the gallbladder, and bile helps break down fats that you eat. And, whoa! Why would it do that? That's very rude. And now this won't work. Okay. That's one thing the liver does. Another thing the liver does is it stores sugar in your body. It takes sugar that's floating around in your blood, and when it gets a signal from the pancreas to store the sugar, it'll do it. Do y'all remember what the signal from the pancreas is that tells the liver to store sugar?
Glucagon.
Nope. Close.
The other thing.
The other thing. Insulin.
I was close.
The pancreas sends out insulin, and when the liver senses the insulin, the liver will pick up the sugar that's in the blood and store it as a special compound called
Wait for it.
Does anyone know? Glycogen. So the liver takes glucose that's floating around in the blood and stores it as glycogen, which is a longer, more complicated molecule. Queen Kathleen. All right. What else does the liver do? The liver strains your blood of poisons. That's one of its most important functions. And does it show the portal veins here? It does not. Let me go back some here. Okay, here's the small intestine. The small intestine has a bunch of blood vessels surrounding it. The blood that absorbs the food from the small intestine goes directly into the liver in a vessel called the hepatic portal vein. And then the liver, hepatic means liver. Have you ever heard that? You ever heard of hepatitis? It's a liver disease, HEPA. If you ever see HEPA, you're talking about the liver. So the hepatic portal vein takes blood directly from the small intestine to the liver. So whatever the blood absorbs in the small intestine goes straight to the liver and goes through the liver, and the cells of the liver check it all out and make sure none of it's poison. And if it is poison, the liver will break it down, will break the poisons down into something that's not so harmful. So that's what happens. That's why alcoholics have liver problems. This is why you shouldn't drink too much. Because the alcohol goes straight from your stomach and intestines into your liver, and your liver has to break down the alcohol. And alcohol is a poison, you see. If you didn't have a liver, you'd die from just a few drinks. But your liver helps keep that from happening. So that's a problem in alcoholics, because the liver is constantly working trying to break that alcohol down, and eventually the liver wears out and isn't able to do it as well. And And so alcoholics usually get liver disease eventually. What's that?
I just had a question. I just thought of how long could someone last without a liver, even if they didn't have any alcoholic drinks?
Well, it also breaks down anything else in your food that's poisonous. So there's all kinds of stuff in foods that you eat that are poisonous. For instance, caffeine. You know, you drink some coffee or Coke, you're fine, because your liver breaks down the caffeine. That's a poison. And I don't know what all out there is poisons if you didn't have a liver. That's a good question. There's probably people on liver disease probably have to go on strict diets and avoid stuff like that. But then again, your liver's also not storing sugar for you. It's not creating bile for you. There's a lot of problems if you don't have a liver. McLean, you're here.
Yes, sir.
Very nice. You have a note?
No, I'll just sign back in with y'all.
Oh, yeah? And they said to come on up?
Yes, sir.
Without a note?
Yes, sir.
Huh. Miss LaValle thinks she can do anything she wants now that she's got a baby. All right. So this just kind of shows, this picture kind of shows the liver up close. And the brown that you see there, those are the liver cells. And there are the blue that you see here, these are veins. So the blood in the veins ends up spreading out and running all through the liver so that the liver can examine the blood. And these little green tubes are little bile ducts that take bile from the cells of the liver. The liver cells are creating bile and eventually move it into the common bile duct, which is right there, and that'll take the bile to the gallbladder. So the main functions of the liver, breaking down poisons, making bile, and storing sugar. We're on 417, McLean, if you're wondering. In the book, page 417. So those are the main functions, but the liver does a lot of other stuff too, which... Here we go. Here's some other stuff. Carbohydrate metabolism. It can change carbohydrates from one form to another, like storing it as glycogen or releasing it as glucose. It can change. If you eat too much sugar, the liver will change the sugar into fat. You can just eat straight sugar and you'll get fat. Did you know that? Go try it. Go just eat cotton candy. That's one of my favorite forms of sugar. Straight cotton candy diet. You'll get fat. Because the liver changes the sugar to fat. That's the lipid metabolism portion. If you just drink protein shakes, just eat straight protein, it's not going to just make you muscular. You got to work out to get the muscles. If you just drink protein shakes without the working out, you get fat. Because the liver will change proteins to fat. And the liver can change fat to proteins also. And so the liver takes all these different molecules and can change them around. That's another important thing that it does. The liver also stores, other than sugar, stores iron and various vitamins. It removes damaged red blood cells. Helps filter the blood. Removes toxins from the blood. I talked about that. It secretes bile. I talked about that. The liver does all these things. And because it has so much sugar and iron and vitamins in it, liver is good for you to eat. You know, like a cow's liver. Have you ever eaten liver and onions? Anyone? Doesn't. Some people don't like the taste of it. Liver and onions. Some people don't like the taste of it, but it's good for you. Because it's got all these, it's got sugar in it, iron, vitamins, it's got proteins in it, fats, it's got everything. You could probably live off liver alone. An all liver diet.
I would enjoy that.
That sounds like
And so this next part talks about the gallbladder. When food, there's a little bit of food. coming out of the stomach and into the small intestine. And so the food enters the stomach, that's number one. And then the cells that line the intestine secrete a hormone. It's called CCK, cholecystokinin. And that hormone flows through the blood and stimulates the gallbladder to squeeze out some bile. And the gallbladder squirts some bile out that passes down this tube. And this little sphincter muscle that's right here opens up, and the bile comes in here. And that's kind of how the gallbladder works. It's actually, there's a hormone involved. As soon as this food enters here, the cells on the walls of the intestine can sense it. Squirt this hormone out, CCK, that travels through the blood and tells the gallbladder to squeeze a little bit. And it squeezes out some bile. So that hormone is important in the function here. There's a lot of hormonal signals like that that cause your body to act in the correct way. Here is a diagram or a picture of looks like an X-ray, because you can see that's. Can you tell that's backbone right there? Mm-hmm. And that's a gallbladder. And all those little things right there are gallstones. They're little stones built up in the gallbladder. And what someone with a diseased gallbladder, for some reason, and they're not really sure why, stones form in the gallbladder. The stones are made of calcium and some other stuff. Some of the bile particles too, and calcium, and they form a stone. And it usually happens in women who are over age 40 and who are obese. That's who usually get gallstones. The 3 F's: female, fat, and 40. That's the doctor's joke. Doctors tell a lot of jokes about us all behind our backs. Anyway, so if you're female, you might have to worry about that when you get older. But once the gallstones are there, they're very painful, and they could go in and just cut the gallbladder open and remove all the gallstones. But it's very likely that they'll come back. So the easiest thing to do is just remove the gallbladder. And so they go in there surgically and they cut right there and they take the whole gallbladder out. And so hopefully my dad will come by tomorrow and show us that operation. If not, we'll do it some other day. And he did thousands of those in his career. And what will happen when you cut that out, what happens is this duct, this common hepatic duct that comes from the liver, starts to enlarge, and it's almost like you grow a new gallbladder. It starts to get bigger and bigger and hold more bile, and it kind of so it's almost like the gallbladder reforms. It never gets as big as the actual gallbladder is, but it can kind of take over the job of what the gallbladder used to do, which is squirting out bile, which breaks down fats. Okay, now here is the small intestine is this big curvy thing. And the small intestine is made up of 3 parts. The duodenum, that's this. The jejunum, which is the second part. And the last part's called the ileum. Duodenum, jejunum, ileum. That's the 3 parts of the small intestine, and they go in that order. The duodenum is the very first part. The duodenum is where the bile is squirted in and where the pancreas squirts in its enzymes. That's the first part of the small intestine. You know how I remember duodenum, jejunum, ileum? It's my favorite DJ, DJ Ill.
Wow.
DJ Ill, you see? Duodenum jejunum ileum. DJ Ill. That's my old DJ name. Huh? Harris, you getting this?
Oh, no.
You don't even care. So, what is the purpose of the small intestine? The small intestine absorbs all the nutrients from the food. Because by the time the food gets this far, it's been pretty much digested. It's been broken down into its smallest elements. And those elements can be absorbed by the blood. And you see this blood vessel coming in here, spreading out all around the small intestine. That blood vessel brings blood to the small intestine, and there are veins that come out of the small intestine carrying the blood away. So there's a lot of blood in the small intestine for absorbing all the food. This fat layer here that attaches the small intestine together is called mesentery. And if you ever do a dissection, I think we still have a rat dissection left. No? We don't? Liza says no.
Can we do
Anyway,
one
if you
in
cut
there?
open any kind of mammal, you'll see the mesentery hanging off of the small intestine. We used to do a big cat dissection in anatomy.
Like a lion?
We cut up a dead cat.
Oh,
Cut
you
it
said
up.
big cat, so.
And no, not like a lion, the house cat. Anyway, it had a real thick mesentery. If you ever cut open a human, you got a lot of mesentery. I saw an autopsy when I worked at the hospital, and man, he had a lot of mesentery in his small intestine. It's pretty nasty. There's the little appendix. And of course that hangs off the colon, which is also this is called the large intestine, it's also called the colon. What they've done is they've fed this person some food that stops x-rays so they can see the inside of his intestines. See how everything's going on in there. If he had a polyp, some kind of growth inside his large intestine, you'd be able to see it on this. I'm sorry, inside his small intestine. You'd be able to see it on this diagram. All of that's small intestine. There's the stomach. Some of the food's still in the stomach there. That a cool picture? This is just kind of showing the small intestine. If you were to cut the guy down the middle, you'd see the small intestine is hanging. There's some of the small intestine there, and there's the mesentery from which it hangs. The mesentery kind of holds it all in place. The mesentery is like a bag holding the small intestine in place. And here's what the small intestine looks like on the inside. If you were to cut it open and look inside it, you'd see all these folds. The lumen of the small intestine is the space in the middle there. You see how it's folded? Let's look up close at these folds. You want to?
Sure.
There's up close. There's the fold. You see I said it was folded? And the inside of the small intestine has millions of little finger-like projections. See those little things there? They look like fingers. And there's millions of them. Those little fingers sticking up are called villi. V-I-L-L-I. And they're what absorb the food. The food molecules are absorbed by these villi. Having so many little fingers sticking up gives a large surface area with which stuff can be absorbed. The entire inside of the small intestine looks like carpet, like this, with all those villi. And if you look up close at a single little finger-like projection, let's look up close at that. This is what it looks like. Here's a single villus, a little finger-like projection, and you can see it's got blood moving through it. There's the artery coming in and the vein going out. This is actually a capillary network, is what it's called. Little tiny blood vessels. See, blood capillary network. And that's where the food is absorbed. The food molecules will go right through these cells and into the blood. They're that small. And this green thing in the middle is called a lacteal. That's a lymph vessel. And remember, we skipped the lymphatic system last chapter, but that little lymph vessel there will absorb all the fats. So fats go into the lacteal, and everything else, sugars and proteins and nucleic acids, go into the blood. Are you all with me here, or does this just sound like blah, 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 blah? That's what your dog sounds like to your dog. You go, "Don't you go in there," and he hears, "Gah, gah, 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 gah." And he's just looking for food. Sometimes I feel that's how y'all are, staring at me, wanting food.
I'm pretty hungry.
You want to see what it looks like on the inside of the small intestine?
I don't think I'm hungry.
To tract were a straight cube like a worm, we would have to be 30 feet tall. Instead, our intestines are neatly looped into coils to fit inside a convenient-sized body. Peristalsis continues its conveyor belt roll, moving the chyme out of the stomach through this tiny non-return valve. Each contraction forces less than a teaspoonful of chyme on into the top of the small intestine, the duodenum.
That's the small intestine.
Here, the inner surface of the gut changes to a moist, velvety lining. It's specially designed to absorb the broken down constituents of food. These tiny finger-like projections called villi increase the area for absorbing nutrients. They give the lining of the small intestine an area 10 times greater than the surface of your skin, enough to carpet a living room. This is where nutrients pass from the intestine into the bloodstream. Each of the tiny villi contains a network of blood vessels which absorb glucose and amino acids, the building blocks of carbohydrates and proteins. Fat flows into tiny tubes in the villi. These connect to another of the body's plumbing systems, the lymphatic vessels, which eventually empty into the blood circulation. This dense network of microscopic tubes is wrapped around the small intestine to carry away the components of food. After we've eaten a heavy meal, blood floods to these capillaries from other parts of the body, leaving our muscles weak and our brains foggy.
That's why y'all are so sleepy after lunch. All the blood's going to your intestine to absorb the food, and you don't have enough blood left in your brain. Okay, I want to show you a video showing you carbohydrate digestion. So these are sugars. Now, I don't know if you remember from regular biology, but very simple sugar molecules are shaped like hexagons. Do y'all remember this? We call them monosaccharides. Remember that? And if you put two of those hexagons together, you know what you got? Two hexagons make a... here we go. Two hexagons together make a disaccharide. Did you get it, Queen Kathleen? And what do we call many hexagons together? Polysaccharide. So if you're eating food, let's say you're eating a potato, you're getting these polysaccharides. And they have to be digested. And so this little video, it's kind of boring. It's boring guy voice, but it shows you really well how the digestion occurs. So pay attention here. This shows it all the way through. It's only about 5 minutes.
Carbohydrates are an important source of building materials and energy for the body. 3 classes of carbohydrates are commonly ingested as food. They are monosaccharides, such as glucose, galactose, and fructose. Disaccharides, such as sucrose, lactose, and maltose. And polysaccharides, such as starch and cellulose. Starch and disaccharides are broken down into their component monosaccharides by a series of hydrolysis reactions. This process of breaking down food into the raw materials needed to build and power our bodies is called digestion. The digestive system includes the organs of the digestive tract and accessory digestive organs. The digestive tract is a continuous muscular tube, open at both ends. It includes the mouth, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, and large intestine. The accessory digestive organs are the teeth, tongue, salivary glands, liver, gallbladder, and pancreas. The first step in carbohydrate digestion takes place in the mouth. Saliva is secreted into the mouth by the salivary glands and mixed with the food as it is chewed. Saliva contains the enzyme salivary amylase. This enzyme removes disaccharide units from one end of the long branch starch molecules. Cellulose and disaccharides are unaffected. Salivary amylase continues to act on starch molecules as the food moves down the esophagus and into the stomach. In the stomach, the food is mixed with highly acidic stomach secretions to form chyme. Stomach acid inactivates salivary amylase. Enzymes in the stomach break it down. From the stomach, the chyme is passed on to the small intestine. Here the chyme is mixed with pancreatic juice secreted by the pancreas. Pancreatic juice neutralizes the stomach acid in the chyme. In addition, pancreatic juice contains the enzyme pancreatic amylase. Like salivary amylase, pancreatic amylase also removes disaccharides from the starch molecule. More and more starch is broken down into disaccharide units as the carbohydrates move through the small intestine. Eventually, starch is no longer present. Cellulose continues through the small intestine unaffected. The cells lining the inside of the small intestine are designed for maximum absorption of small molecules. Each cell has many finger-like projections on its outer membrane called microvilli. Many carbohydrate metabolizing enzymes are embedded in the membrane of each microvillus. These enzymes split the disaccharides into monosaccharides. Maltase is an enzyme which hydrolyzes the disaccharide maltose into 2 molecules of the monosaccharide glucose. Sucrase splits sucrose into glucose and fructose. And lactase breaks lactose into glucose and galactose. Starches and disaccharides are completely degraded and absorbed in the small intestine, but cellulose molecules are untouched. Cellulose molecules pass into the large intestine and leave the body unchanged.
Hey! Did you get all that? Question? So this molecule is small enough to enter into the bloodstream through the cells in the villi of the small intestine. But this molecule is too big, so it has to be broken down or digested. digestion is breaking down large molecules to their very smallest molecules so that they can be absorbed into your blood. Your blood needs the smallest molecule. If you just ate small molecules like glucose, you wouldn't have to digest. Glucose doesn't have to be digested. You eat it, it goes right through, and it's absorbed into the blood in the small intestine. It doesn't have to be broken down. But much of the foods you eat are larger molecules, not small molecules. Exciting? Well, I'll tell you something else that is exciting. 15 minutes to work on IDs.